Hey everyone, it's Professor Clark, and we are starting Chapter 10. Woohoo! For the rest of the textbook, so the last 3 chapters of the textbook, these are all lectures I originally made in great haste during the spring of 2020 when the university was suddenly and unexpectedly shut down due to COVID, and we had to switch everything all of a sudden to online. So I was teaching completely in person for the first half of the semester, and then I suddenly had to switch to online teaching for the second half of the semester. And I have repurposed those lectures, so they may be a little bit different from the preceding lectures in this section because they were made a semester earlier. And made, I should say, in great haste and while I was under a considerable amount of stress. So I apologize for any discrepancies or mistakes in them. I have since gone back and tried to edit them and bring them in line with the rest of the lectures in this series, but nonetheless, they will probably be slightly different. So just bear that in mind, and let's go ahead and jump into Chapter 10 and how to discuss the weather. So welcome to Russian temperature measurement. It's really important to remember that Russian normally uses Celsius or centigrade rather than Fahrenheit, just like they use the metric system and everything else. And so that means that 0 degrees or 0 gradusov Celsius is freezing, and 100 gradusov or 100 degrees is boiling. The average human temperature is about 37 degrees or 37 gradusov. A fever is anything of 38 or above. So 38 gradusov, 39 gradusov is considered to be a fever and requires medical attention. 20 gradusov po Celsiu, or about 20 degrees, is considered to be a cool, sort of, but reasonably pleasant day. 30 gradusov po Celsiu is considered to be a pretty hot day. That's in the upper 80s. And 40 gradusov, that would be over 100 degrees, is considered to be extremely hot. So, as you might have guessed, the word for degree in Russian is gradus, which is a regular hard stem masculine noun. So, 1 gradus, 2 gradusa, 5 gradusov. And it can be po Celsiu in Celsius or po Fahrenheit in Fahrenheit. If you don't indicate what it is, it's assumed to be Celsius. If you want to talk about temperatures that are above freezing, you can say, for example, plus 10 gradusov or 10 gradusov tepla, so plus 10 degrees or 10 degrees of warmth. If you want to say that it's below freezing, you can say minus 10 gradusov, for example, or 10 gradusov moroza, so minus 10 degrees or 10 degrees of frost. So if we're talking about precipitation, so rain or snow, which in Russian is osadki, any kind of precipitation is osadki. The thing to remember is that in Russian, precipitation goes in one direction, which makes sense. It's going from the sky to the ground. So if you want to say, and I'm sure you remember this, it's raining or it's snowing, you say idет дождь or idет снег. Note that that's a unidirectional verb of motion. It's technically a foot verb. The snow or the rain is powering itself. And it's imperfective. So in the past, if you want to say it was raining or it was snowing, or it regularly rained or it regularly snowed, you would just use the past of et, and both dождь and снег are masculine. So you would say шел дождь, шел снег. And again, if you want to say it will be raining or snowing, or it will rain and snow regularly, you will continue to use the imperfective, but this time in the future. So будет идти дождь or будет идти снег. Note, by the way, the pronunciation of dождь and снег. We have word final devoicing. So the g in снег becomes k, and the the d in dождь becomes t. And that makes the zh in dождь become sh. However, if you add an ending, those sounds become voiced again. So снег, много снега. Дождь, много дождя. Note that dождь is n-stressed, so много дождя под дождем. Okay, that was a little digression. Let's get back to our weather vocab. If you wanted to say it started to rain or it started to snow, then we would use пойти, just like you would with any other kind of motion. So пошел дождь or пошел снег. Or it will start to rain or it will start to snow, пойдет дождь or пойдет снег. So here are some more examples of precipitation and how you would talk about it. Идет дождь, because it's imperfective, means both it is raining and it rains. So for example, or например, сейчас идет дождь, it's raining right now. But we could also say, в Северной Каролине часто идет дождь. It often rains in North Carolina. And if you note, even though we have repeated action, we're still using this unidirectional verb of motion because rain always moves in one direction. It always moves from the sky to the ground. So even if it does it over and over again, it's not taking a round trip. I guess you could argue that it is taking a round trip because it evaporates and goes back into the sky. But the description of the actual act of raining is only unidirectional, and we only use unidirectional verbs of motion for it. And again, in the past, if we said «Вчера шел снег весь день», it snowed or it was snowing all day yesterday, we have action of long duration, so imperfective, but it was all happening in one direction, so unidirectional verb of motion. But if you wanted to indicate that it suddenly started to rain, you could say something like «Я собиралась погулять по парку, но вдруг пошел дождь». I was planning to go for a walk around the park, but it suddenly started to rain. If we want to talk about the future, we could have something like «Синоптики говорят, что будет много идти снег на следующей неделе». The weather reports say it will snow a lot next week, so repeated action, so we have this imperfective future, будет идти, but it's all unidirectional still. It's all going to snow in one direction, so we still use идти, even though it's repeated action. But if we want to emphasize the starting of the precipitation, we're going to use some form of пойти. So, я хочу погулять по парку, но если пойдет дождь, то останусь дома. I want to walk around the park, but if it starts to rain, I will stay home. The section in the textbook also has some other weather vocabulary that may be a little less familiar to you. So for example, to shine, светить. Notice the conjugation, and the PowerPoint has a link to its Wiktionary page with the full paradigm, but the infinitive is светить with the stress on the ending. It's a shifting stress verb, second conjugation with a consonant mutation, so свечу, светишь, светит. And so we use it obviously to talk about the sun. Светит солнце or солнце светит. The sun shines or is shining. Obviously in the past tense, it would be светило. Another verb that's a little bit unusual looking is дуть, to blow. And again, the PowerPoint has the link to its Wiktionary page so that you can see its full paradigm. The conjugation goes дую, дуешь, дует, дуем, дуете, дую, дул, дула, дула, дули. Just so that you know. And so we can say things like ветер сильно дует. The wind is blowing strongly, or it's very windy. We can also say things like сегодня ветрено. It's windy today. If you're going to use the past tense with that or any other description of the weather, and you're going to say it was windy, it was sunny, it was cloudy, for example, the past tense would be in the neuter form. So, вчера было ветрено. The future tense is going to be in the future singular, third person. So, завтра будет ветрено. And there's a whole list of other adjectives of weather on page 258, and the construction is the same. So if you want to say, today is hot, you'd say сегодня жарко with the neuter short form of the adjective. You would also know this as the adverbial form. So, сегодня жарко, сегодня холодно, сегодня солнечно, сегодня прохладно, сегодня ветрено, and so on and so forth. For all of these, the past tense is going to be the neuter form of the verb. Вчера было жарко, вчера было холодно, вчера было ветрено, вчера было прохладно, and so on and so forth. And the future is going to be the third person singular form of the verb. Again, with the short form neuter form. So, завтра будет холодно, завтра будет жарко, завтра будет облачно, so on and so forth. However, if you have a noun, so not something like вчера or сегодня, but a proper noun like лето, зима, осень, or весна as your subject, you're going to use the long form of the adjective and match it to the noun that it modifies. There are some examples on page 259, but you would say things like «Лето здесь обычно жаркое», «Зима холодная», things like that. And again, if you have a verb, you're going to match the verb to the subject. So «Зима была холодная», «Лето было жаркое», and so on and so forth.